Apart from an impromptu party, nothing much happened in 1982 after the pubs closed at 10. The cities had an odd nightclub with a late licence. However, the Manawatu township of Wanganui was certainly not one of those. Not after midnight on a Thursday. Little wonder, therefore, the two security guards on duty inside the Wanganui Computer Centre had immediate suspicions about the sandy-haired, darkly dressed man approaching the building, a red rucksack on his back. Before the guards located in the foyer had a chance to challenge the intruder, there was an almighty explosion, the result of which you can see in this photo. In the red bag was an estimated 2 kilograms of gelignite. The man had literally and figuratively blown himself to pieces, would only later be identified by a tattoo. This punk won't see 23, no future. Neil Ian Roberts was good to his word. He was 22. Between the years of 1978 and 1980, I was in a Christchurch punk band. In anthropological terms, I would categorise the punk movement into two camps. The middle-class teens who dabbled in rebellion on weekends but still did their homework. The smaller but much more staunch group who embraced the punk lifestyle 24/7. The latter group were way more political and serious. They wore Doc Martens to bed. Apart from just the music, both groups shared one other major thing in common. They were bored. In 1982, there were sizable pockets of anarchists up and down the country. Their mortal enemies were the rugby, racing and beer crew. Just dressing the wrong way at the time could result in a dusting. In 1981, the country was ripped apart when the Springbok rugby team toured. New Zealand also lived undoubtedly under the most dictatorial Prime Minister ever in Robert Muldoon. His policy to scrap New Zealand's fledgling superannuation scheme was arguably the worst made by any leader in our country's history. This was a time when it was a criminal offence for two men to have sex. Chinese food at McDonald's was seen as exotic. This, however, was not a unique situation for New Zealand, a vast expanse to fit 3 million people into. I lived in London in the 80s, and it was a drab, heartless place at times. The Harrods IRA bomb went off 100 metres from where I was standing. But the UK, at least you had an option to eat Indian, and it was, after all, the birthplace of punk and the kickback. Back in New Zealand, a vessel that best exemplified the Muldoon regime was the establishment of the Wanganui Computer Centre, consolidating all the police and court records under one roof with a mainframe that would have the power of a modern-day PC. A businessman's speeding ticket resided on the system along with someone guilty of GBH. One Auckland punk who was in the front lines of the Springbok protest and got a conviction for obstructing police in the process believed he could change the system. I don't think somehow Auckland Grammar has a chest-thumping honours board with the name Neil Roberts embossed in gold lettering on display anywhere. After leaving school, he got a job as a chef and a forklift driver and caught the tail end of the punk movement, adopted a name to suit, Neil Null, going out of his way to attire himself differently in keeping with his libertarian lifestyle. Any bio on Roberts is a mass of contradictions. On one hand, he professed to be a pacifist. Later, press reports dubbed him the Cheerful Punk. Yet he hung around with the nihilistic boot boys and talked about driving a petrol truck into a nameless large corporation to make a political statement and somehow avoid killing anyone. The Beehive and Auckland police stations were also other targets. Even amongst the nonconformists, the quietly spoken diminutive Roberts was seen as the person most likely to do something and not just talk about it. His clock was ticking closer to midnight. Checking in his job, he went on a tiki tour of the country in an old bus whilst living on the dole. Openly talked about his suicide plans and gradually began selling or giving away all his possessions. Roberts had staked out his target in the preceding weeks and travelled to Wanganui by bus that afternoon. Popped into a petrol station and purchased a battery, then progressed to public toilets in the vicinity of the centre, where he sprayed a quote employed by the Bolivian independence movement. Took time to write a last-minute suicide note on a piece of cardboard.
To my close friends, well, here I am, sitting in front of that stupid computer in the dark with a bundle of gelignite in each pocket of Ronald, when I realised, fuck, no suicide note. I've been putting it off and off, and I've just realised why I don't want to write one. Bloody trendy things. I was going to go into a massive rant about anarchy and this life, world in general. Why I don't want to get old, but words are no good. Hey, remember, I decided to kill myself, so therefore I became a punk, not because I was a punk. Keep fighting. I'm looking forward to death. One day we'll win.
And then marched up to the doors of the centre. No one else was hurt in the explosion, and the newspapers were all over the place in their coverage. Some were dismissive of the incident as if to sweep it amongst other news of the day, such as Lindy Chamberlain and the dingo. Roberts was labelled as a loner, then part of a greater network of anarchists plotting similar attacks. The government took the latter seriously enough to increase security around all government buildings. His friends weren't at all surprised he was good to his word. Did he achieve anything? That depends on who you talk to. Neil Roberts had loving parents and a girlfriend, and a close circle of friends, a lot to live for. I am 61, the same age as Roberts would be today. This hasn't stopped me reforming the old punk band 5 years ago under a new name. I progressed to guitar, but then discovered the bass player was infinitely better than I, and I'm now relegated to bass again. I still listen to Talking Heads, Sex Pistols and Devo. In 1978, Neil Young wrote a well-known grungy song along with Devo. Only trivia freaks like me know shit like this. The lyrics of that song epitomise the changing times and Young's fall from grace in the musical hegemony. The third verse from Hey Hey My is I think it's fair to say Neil Ian Roberts simply preferred to burn out rather than fade away, and he's certainly not forgotten. I would love to hear from those who knew the guy, so if you did, go ahead and comment please. Likes and subscriptions is what keeps this channel rocking. I'll spot you next time. Bye for now.